Okay, right off the bat, I'll provide you a reason for paying attention to this video.
Is that the nature of status fundamentally changed. It moved away from wealth and resource into the realm of ideology and belief, and that became a key indicator for the elite class to accrue status.
Now, this is the Daily Wire, and obviously he's saying this disparagingly, but there seems to be truth to what he's saying. And if this claim is true, your status is inextricably linked to your beliefs. So let's take a closer look at the leading ideas in our society. I'll be presenting here the introduction to the book Meaning and Authenticity. A new ethos emerged in society following World War II and the 1960s. The left had become an affluent group in society, and they were no longer concerned solely about economic and political alienation. It was concerned with individuals being alienated from their own true selves. And overcoming this alienation meant the search for self authenticity. But what even is authenticity? We won't be able to answer that question here in the introduction, but implicit to authenticity is the desire to shape one's life or oneself in accordance with an ideal. It is to be true to a higher standard, to be the genuine article. So, authenticity is better than inauthenticity. Your way is superior to someone else's way. Being yourself is better than trying to be someone else. Your true self is greater than your false self. The language of authenticity permeates all of culture. We see it in ads, politics, entertainment, and so on.
Find your true self in a Honda. Choose your own road with the new Honda lineup, and remember, never follow.
What's the home of my dreams? A place that reflects my personality without the neighbors complaining. A place that just sounds right. Unleash your true self. Apply for a home loan consultation. Luminor.
What does your true self have to do with Honda or home loans? Obviously, nothing. They're simply piggybacking on the leading ideas of our culture. And it's definitely not the marketing departments who came up with these ideas. The quest for authenticity did not just magically appear in the 1960s either. The idea of authenticity has a history. It built on earlier forms of individualism, such as John Locke's unencumbered political individual, who put the person's will prior to all and any social obligation. But while still celebrating the individual, a new way of thinking emerged that was extremely critical of those more exaggerated forms of individualism. In the 1700s, thinkers such as Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Johann Gottfried Herder laid the groundwork for authenticity. In short, what comes out of this period is that humans should not expect to find models of living outside of themselves. Within each of us, we have to find a source, our inner nature, which connects us to something greater than ourselves. Since one's nature is intrinsic, each person has to follow what is within, and this may be without precedent. In other words, there is an identity that is peculiar to you, unique to you, and if you are not true to yourself, you miss the point of your life. Authenticity further developed in the 1900s with thinkers such as Martin Heidegger and later Jean-Paul Sartre, but there's no space to expand on them here. Heidegger will have a whole presentation to himself. Suffice it to say, there's a lot of confusion around what authenticity actually means. A lot of people, a lot of it likely has to do with the fact that for most people, it's just a hodgepodge of ideas to choose from, regardless of its philosophic standing, whether the ideas are still viable or they have been surpassed. People just arbitrarily choose what appeals to them. There is no full contextualized understanding. This is true in popular culture as well as among the educated. For example, all these PhDs in magazines like Psychology Today can be shown to miss the mark to some degree. Unsurprisingly, then, there's a lot of backlash and criticisms towards what people have called authenticity. It's been described as just another form of narcissism, a self-centeredness unconcerned with wider society, where the only associations one forms are those which foster self-fulfillment, so all relationships are ultimately manipulative and instrumental. Or it leads people to think that since only I can choose my way, all criticisms are off limits. And what inevitably results is moral relativism and atomism. But as we'll see in later presentations, this is a misunderstanding of authenticity. I'll make a note here that l'enfant roi, the child king, is a bad combination of two out-of-context ideas stemming from this branch of philosophy. The idea that the individual is to find his own way, and Rousseau's idea of human nature being good by default and culture being a corrupting agent. The child cannot be wrong, and if the parent intervenes, he is corrupting the child's spirit. Again, this is bogus, a shallow, out-of-context understanding of the ideas, but it is still something we live with. Another criticism is leveled at people who simply use the jargon of authenticity and expect special status. The underlying beliefs don't matter. The jargon of authenticity is likened to a pseudo-religion, where it is sufficient for the act of believing to merely use the terms, as if by merely uttering the word you're automatically what you speak. One does not have to say what one thinks, one does not even have to think it properly. So it is not responsible to any reason, it simply urges people to a higher vocabulary. Truth and transcendence are collapsed into this one term. Authenticity is also criticized for arbitrary uniqueness. It's been described as megalomania of self-infinitization, which consists in the refusal to accept limits, in the idea that nothing is forbidden and all is explored. Each individual is now considered the highest good, and the enhancement of this uniqueness has become the ultimate value. Simply put, being different from others and novelty becomes an end in itself. The reasons and the content for doing so are unimportant. People build their identity on arbitrary grounds. It is also accused of being a poor facade for self-interested action, which basically amounts to subjectivity. You see, when authenticity is denied any objective normativity separate from the subject, well, subjectivity becomes the judge of authenticity. Authenticity is determined by the arbitrariness of the subject, which is authentic to itself. So authenticity circles back and becomes identical to subjectivity. Authenticity is thus reduced to simply approving of one's own subjectivity. So-called authentic ones also think themselves immune to the dehumanizing effects of mass communication, but in reality, they are simply living out a different type of consumerism. It is a consumerism that not only has a special claim on the spirit, though, but it is in fact linked to what others esteem. It protects the person from the disagreeable task of expressing himself seriously on the matter at hand about which he knows nothing. And it supports and reassures a pernicious self-righteousness in which the person thinks he has achieved this all by himself as an unencumbered free person. It thus inoculates the authentic ones from the self-realization that what he is in fact doing is bleating with the crowd. Despite these criticisms, though, authenticity endures. In many ways, it is because the criticisms are not directed at what authenticity actually is. So what is needed in our culture is not an uncritical acceptance of authenticity, nor an outright condemnation, but a more adequate understanding of the real meaning of authenticity. Authenticity remains a keystone concept in our culture, and efforts must be made to properly understand it. This is because it offers the solutions to our current predicaments and will ultimately shape our institutions. Thus, it has enormous consequences for a common destiny as man and woman and the issues of development. Two Canadian thinkers will be crucial in the task of properly understanding authenticity. Bernard Lonergan, who is a Jesuit priest, philosopher, and theologian, who is regarded by many as one of the most important thinkers of the 20th century, and Charles Taylor, who is a highly decorated philosopher for the contributions he made towards shaping human self-understanding and the advancement of humanity. Both Lonergan and Taylor take seriously the contributions of modernity, as well as the criticism made by the postmodernists. But they reject the postmodern claims that one must simply accept the irreducible plurality of cultures, values, and disciplines. Instead of this relativism, they put forth a normative human existence, authenticity. We indeed do exist in a world of shared meanings and values. Taylor rehabilitates what is best and viable in modernity's approach to authenticity and identifies a self-determining freedom ordered in something larger than the self, something noble, courageous, virtuous. Lonergan develops a transcendental understanding of what constitutes authenticity by a threefold conversion: intellectual, moral, and religious. They emphasize the intimate link between philosophy, theology, and ordinary living, and are concerned with practical questions about the right way to live, both personally and communally. As we will see, authenticity is existential and cannot be neatly tucked away in a category. It is at once psychological, sociological, historical, philosophical, theological, religious, and so on. It is all of them because the person is all and involved in all. So, what are the main points? That status is inextricably linked to beliefs. And by status, I mean authority, though, not power. Power can be corrupted, authority cannot. This will make more sense when I present orthodoxy. Number two, authenticity is a keystone principle in our culture. So being authentic is better than being inauthentic. But beyond that, viable authenticity is better than a fragmented consumerist authenticity. And finally, number three, that there is a need to understand authenticity correctly at many levels of society, personally, communally, and institutionally.